Hello dear learners, a warm welcome to you all in this session. This is Anuradha and once again we will continue with the chapter Heredity and Evolution. And today we will discuss another interesting topic, evolution. What do you think the evolution is? Evolution is something that every living organism would undergo. From the last session, it must be clear that variation take place during reproduction. It may be because of errors in DNA copying and as a result of sexual reproduction. These variations participate in evolution. We can define evolution as the gradual change in the heritable characteristics of organism from a simple to a more complex form. It took place over years. Let us understand evolution with some consequences of this tendency of variation. Now consider a group of 12 red beetles. These red beetles live in green bushes. They underwent sexual reproduction and increase in number. Due to variation, one green beetle was formed. Crows eat on these beetles. They ate the red ones as the green one was not visible on the green bushes. The green beetle got the survival advantage. It participated in reproduction. As a result, gradually the population of green beetles increased. Eventually, there arrived a time when there were no red beetles and all green beetles. Green beetles continued to increase in number by reproduction. Variation occurred. One blue beetle was formed. With reproduction, blue beetles and green beetles were both increasing in number. However, green ones were much more in numbers. Accidentally, an elephant steps onto the bushes on that side where most of the green beetles lived. Suddenly, the green beetles reduced in number. Blue beetles survived accidentally and continued to reproduce. Eventually, there arrived a time when there was no green beetles and all blue beetles. Now consider a third situation. In this, as the beetles' population begins to expand, the bushes start suffering from a plant disease. The amount of leaf material for the beetles is reduced. As a result, the beetles are poorly nourished. The average weight of the adult beetles decreases, but there is no genetic change occurring. After a few years and a few beetle generation of such scarcity, the plant disease is eliminated. There is a lot of leaf food. At this time, what would we expect the weight of the beetle to be? We discussed the idea that the germ cells of sexually reproducing populations are made in specialized reproductive tissue. If the weight of the beetle is reduced because of starvation, that will not change the DNA of the germ cell. Therefore, low weight is not a trait that can be inherited by the progeny of a starving beetle. Therefore, even if some generation of beetles are low in weight because of a starvation, that is not an example of evolution, since the change is not inherited over generations. Now have a look on all three situations. In situation first, green beetles got the survival advantage or they were naturally selected as they were not visible in green bushes. This natural selection is exerted by crows, resulting in the adaptation in the beetles to fit better in their environment. Situation 2. Blue beetles did not get survival advantage. Elephants suddenly caused major havoc in the beetle population, otherwise their number would have been considerably large. From this we can conclude that accidents can change the frequency of some genes even if they do not get survival advantage. This is called genetic drift and it led to variation. Situation 3. No genetic change has occurred in the population of beetle. The population gets affected for a short duration only due to environmental changes. The story of the beetle shows that the frequency of an inherited trait or certain genes changes over generations. Let us understand evolution a bit more. With the term evolution, human evolution is the thing comes to our mind. We can say that very first organism on this planet must have been a unicellular organism from which life moved on land, and we have many different species today. Also, we have so many multicellular organisms on the planet today. But how it all comes to us? Is it true or just a story like grandmother's tale that initially we are monkey, then we changes to human beings as we are today? So these are some questions which obviously come to our mind whenever we talk about evolution. Now, the first question which comes to our mind that how life originated on earth. Many scientists put their thoughts and theories. Charles Darwin, an English naturalist, was the most dominant figure among the biologists of the 19th century. He made an extensive study on nature for over 20 years, especially in 1831 to 1836 when he went on voyage on the famous ship HMS Beagle and explored South America, the Galapagos Island and other islands. He collected the observation on animals, distribution and relationship between living and extinct animals. He found that existing living forms share similarities to varying degree not only among themselves but also with the life form that existed millions of years ago, some of which have become extinct. Darwin's theory of evolution tells us how life evolved from simple to more complex forms, and Mendel's experiment gave us mechanism for the inheritance of traits from one generation to the next. But neither tells us anything about how life begins on earth in the first place. J.B.S. Haldane, a British scientist who becomes a citizen of India later, suggested in 1929 that life must have been developed from the simple inorganic molecules which were present on earth soon after it was formed. He speculated that the conditions on earth at that time, which were far from the conditions we see today, could have given rise to more complex organic molecules that were necessary for life. The first primitive organism would arise from further chemical synthesis. Stanley Miller and Harold in 1953 conducted experiment. They assembled an atmosphere similar to that thought to exist on early earth. This had molecules like ammonia, methane and hydrogen sulfide but no oxygen. This was maintained at a temperature just below 100 degrees Celsius, and sparks were passed through the mixture of gases to simulate lightning. At the end of a week, 15% of the carbon from methane had been converted to similar compounds of carbon, including amino acids, which make the protein molecules. Let us discuss some postulates of Darwinism. The main postulates of Darwinism are: the first one, limited food and space. Darwinism states that though a population tends to increase geometrically, the food increases only arithmetically. So, two main limiting factors on the tremendous increase of a population are limiting food and space, which together forms the major part of carrying capacity of environment. Second, struggle for existence. Due to rapid multiplication of populations but limited food and space, there starts an everlasting competition between individuals having similar requirements. This competition between living organisms for the basic needs of life like the food, space, mate, etc. is called struggle for existence. The third one is natural selection or survival of the fittest. Darwin stated that as many selects the individual with the desired characters in artificial selection, nature selects only those individuals which are with useful continuous variations and are best adapted to the environment, while the less fit or unfit individuals are rejected by it. The fourth that we discuss is inheritance of useful variations. Darwin believed that the selected individuals pass their useful continuous variations to their offsprings so that they are born fit to the changed environment. The fifth and the important point that we have to discuss is speciation. According to Darwinism, useful variations appear in every generation and are inherited from one generation to another. So, the useful variations go on accumulating, and after a number of generations, the variations become so prominent that the individual turns into a new species. So, according to Darwinism, evolution is a gradual process and Speciation occurs by gradual changes in the existing species. So, there are some evidences against Darwinism that we have to discuss. So, let us discuss one by one. Darwinism is not able to explain, first, the inheritance of small variation in those organs which can be of use only when fully formed. For example, wings of a bird. Such organs will be of no use in incipient or underdeveloped stage. Second, inheritance of vestigial organs. The third one is inheritance of over specialized organs, for example, antlers in deer and tusks in elephants. The fourth point that we have to discuss, presence of neuter flowers and sterility of hybrids. The fifth point is did not differentiate between somatic and germinal variation. Sixth, he did not explain the cause of the variation and the mode of transmission of variations. Next, it was also refused by Mendel's law of inheritance, which states that inheritance is particulate. So, this theory explains only the survival of the fittest but does not explain the arrival of the fittest. There are some other theories of evolution given by different naturalists. Now, we will discuss Lamarckism here. So, Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck was another great French naturalist. He proposed Lamarckism, also called the theory of inheritance of acquired characters. In his famous book Philosophic Zoologic, basically his theory is based on the inheritance of acquired characters, which are defined as the changes or variation developed in body of an organism from normal characters in response to changes in environment or in the functioning like use and disuse of organ to fulfill their new needs. So, according to Lamarck, if an organism not using a particular organ for a long time, then that organ become dysfunctional after thousands of years. In same way, excessive use of an organ lead to development of that organ, according to Lamarck. He also said, if an organism changes to adapt to its environment, then those changes are passed on to its offsprings. Thus, Lamarck stressed on adaptation as mean of evolutionary modification. Now, let us discuss some postulate of Lamarckism also. So, Lamarckism is based on these following postulate. The first one is new needs. The changes in the environmental factors like light, temperature, medium, food, air etc. are migration of animal led to origin of new needs in the living organisms, especially animals. To fulfill these new needs, the living organisms have to exert special efforts like the change in habit or behavior. Second, use and disuse of a particular organ. Now, the new habits involve the greater use of certain organs to meet new needs and the disuse or lesser use of certain other organs which are of no use in new condition. This use and disuse of organs greatly affect the form, structure and functioning of the organs. Continuous and extra use of organs make them more efficient, while the continued disuse of some other organs led to their degeneration and ultimate disappearance. So, Lamarckism is also called the theory of use and disuse of organs. The organism acquires certain new characters due to direct or indirect environmental effects during its own lifespan and are called acquired or adaptive characters. So, Lamarckism is also called the theory of inheritance of acquired characteristics. Lamarck believed that acquired characters are inheritable and are transmitted to offsprings so that these are born fit to face the changed environmental conditions and chances of their survival are increased. Next, we have to discuss speciation. Lamarck believed that in every generation, new characters are acquired and transmitted to next generation so that these new characters accumulate generation after generation. After a number of generations, a new species is formed. We can say that there are some evidence also in favor of Lamarckism. So, let us discuss one by one. Phylogenetic studies of horse, elephant and other animals show that all these increase in their evolution from simple to complex form. Lamarck explains his idea with the example of the giraffe. He said that giraffes initially were the short-necked deer-like animals. They eat on short bushes on land, but the time came when there is a shortage of bushes available on the land or deficiency of food available. So, in order to survive, they have to eat on leaves of long trees. For this, they kept on stretching their necks to reach the height. As a result of this habit, continued for a long time, this stretching resulted in gradually lengthening of the neck and forelimbs with every generation. It's not a spontaneous process obviously, it took millions of years for this change. He also gave examples of flightless birds. As we know, birds are generally adapted for flight. But development of flightless birds like ostrich from their flying ancestor is due to continuous disuse of wings for many generations. These were found in well protected areas with plenty of food, or for whatsoever reason they ended up to flightless birds. As their wings are not strong enough for the flight, so we have flightless bird these days, according to Lamarck obviously. These examples, which appear new in light of later discoveries, constitute some of the evidence on which Lamarck rested his theory. So, according to him, use or disuse of any organ or for generation resulted in modification or disappearance of that organ respectively. Development of aquatic birds like ducks, geese, etc. from their terrestrial ancestors by the acquired characters like reduction of wings due to their continued disuse, development of webs between their toes for wedding purposes is another example. He also discussed vestigial organs. These are the organs which are no longer in use and have become non-functional. Yes, they also exist and are called as vestigial organs. A good example of vestigial organ in a human being is vermiform appendix, which is an extension to the large intestine. This structure is of no use and is supposed to be the remnant of some organs that ancestors had. Some other examples of vestigial organs are pinna of ear and wisdom tooth. For the theory Lamarckism, there is lot of criticism. So, let us discuss what is this. A hard blow to Lamarckism came from a German biologist, August Weismann, who proposed the theory of continuity of germ plasm in 1892 AD. This theory states that environmental factors do affect only somatic cells and not the germ cells. According to him, as the link between the generation is only through the germ cells and the somatic cells are not transmitted to the next generation, so the acquired characters must be lost with the death of an organism. So, these should have no role in evolution. He did an experiment on mice. So, what he did? He amputated the tail of both male and female for about 22 generations and allowed them to breed and observe the offsprings, but tailless mice were never born. Similarly, boring of pinna of external ears and nose in Indian women are not transmitted from one generation to another generation. Again, heart size does not increase generation after generation, though it is used continuously. Finally, there are a number of examples in which there is reduction in the size of organs. For example, among angiosperm, shrubs and herbs have evolved from the trees. So, Lamarckism was finally rejected. Now, let us discuss about evolutionary relationships. When we try to follow evolutionary relationship, how do we identify characteristics as common? These characteristics in different organisms would be similar because they are inherited from a common ancestor. As an example, consider the fact that mammals have 4 limbs, as do birds, reptiles and amphibians. See the figure, the basic structure of the limbs is similar to, though it has been modified to perform different functions in various vertebrates. Such a homologous characteristics help to identify an evolutionary relationship between apparently different species. However, all similarities simply in organ shape are not necessarily because of common ancestry. Another way of tracing evolutionary relationship depends on the original idea that we started with. That idea was that changes in DNA during reproduction are the basic event in evolution. If that is the case, then comparing the DNA of different species should give us a direct estimate of how much the DNA has changed during the formation of these species. This method is now extensively used to define evolutionary relationships. We must be wondering that we should have some evidence to prove the occurrence of evolution. Different shreds of evidences are fossils. Such studies of organs structure can be done not only on current species, but also on species that are no longer alive. How do we know that these extinct species ever existed? We know this from finding fossils. What are fossils? The dead remains of plants and animals that got buried under the earth millions of years ago are the fossils. The study of fossils is called paleontology. Fossils reveal the order of origin. Archaeopteryx. It is a fossil that resembles bird as well as reptiles. We can say that it is evidence of a link between reptiles and birds. Homologous organs. Homo means same. So, they are the organs have the same structure but performs different functions. For example, forelimbs of men and cow. Analogous organs are those organs which have a different structure but performs the same function. For example, wings of birds and insects. Vestigial organs were functional in our ancestors, but now they are not functional. For example, nictitating membrane that was not functional in human but functional in birds, pinna of the external ear and vermiform appendix. So, with this we have completed the topic. Let us do a quick revision of what we learnt. Evolution is the gradual change in the heritable characteristics of organisms from a simple to a more complex form, and it took place over years. The four postulates of Lamarckism are: living organisms or their component parts tend to increase in size, production of new organ is resultant from a new need, continued use of an organ make it more developed, while disuse of an organ results in degeneration. Acquired characters or modification developed by individuals during their own lifetime are inheritable and accumulate over a period of time, resulting a new species. We can summarize Darwin's theory also. According to Darwin theory, individuals of species struggle for food, space and mate. Those who can struggle survive, others eliminate. Favorable characters pass on to next generation. Accumulation of new characters leads to evolution. Vestigial organs are the organs that are no longer in use, like appendix, pinna of ear, etc. Now, this is the time to say goodbye. We'll meet in the next session. Thank you.